This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. Guys, that is Psalm 127, 3-5. And I just want to give a quick thank you to our donors today. And this is going to be a very quick thank you just because we got a ton of stuff to cover. Because I realized something. I have all these things that I wanted to talk about on the show, all these quick hitters, all these different things that I wanted to get to, and it just wasn't going to happen. I was not going to be able to get on here and record another episode until like probably mid-October. Got some really, really, really cool things coming up in September that you guys will know about here in just a little bit. And so we've got a lot of ground to cover today, and I am emptying out the bag on quick hitters. And so we've got a quick hitters bonanza, and then I got a bone to pick with Luke Combs. So here's what we're going to be covering in the quick hitters segment. You will not want to miss it. Planned Parenthood giving away free abortions and vasectomies during the Democratic National Convention, a website tracking how conservative and liberal U.S. senators are deleting their page ranking Kamala Harris as the most liberal of all 100 U.S. senators, Donald Trump attempting to tarnish his pro-life legacy, a Christian, we'll use that in scare quotes, news site saying that Christians should support abortion, Meta CEO and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg revealing that the Biden-Harris administration has pressured them to censor dissenting content, the U.S. government losing track of tens of thousands of illegal immigrant children, 20 illegal immigrants attempting to hijack an elementary school bus in San Diego, California, a Secret Service agent leaving her post to defending former President Trump in order to breastfeed her child in a private room, a new law in Iraq that would allow grown men to marry 9-year-old girls, the UK banning puberty blockers for gender-confused children, the mastermind of 9/11 and the other terrorist attacks being spared the death penalty, a woman murdering her newborn baby by throwing her out of a window because she was afraid that the baby would ruin her career, Major League Baseball and the New York Mets disgracing themselves by allowing the Hawk Tua girl to throw out the first pitch at a game, Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff proving that he is indeed a beta male, InterVarsity Press releasing a critical race theory Bible commentary, a high school in my city, Edmond, Oklahoma, barring a student from flying an American flag on his personal vehicle, and Andy Stanley still super duper sucking. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how in the world are you going to talk about all of that and what you plan to talk about right now? I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. So here we go. Send it. So here's the bone that I've got to pick with country music megastar Luke Combs. Now, you might be wondering, Kyle, why would you have a bone to pick with one of the biggest stars in country music, in modern country music history, who's, by most indications, whenever you hear people talk about the guy, seems like a really good, caring dude? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because here I was, minding my own business. And sometime in May, I saw a bunch of videos using a snippet of audio from a Luke Combs song, okay? But it was an unreleased song called Huntin' by Yourself, okay? And people were making all kinds of videos using the snippet from their song, and they're showing their kids, and it was making everyone cry. And, it was just kind of one of those deals. And I guess now that I'm a parent, and now that I have sons, I'm like, oh, okay, these things, they really do get to me. They really do make me emotional. Then I see a video pop up on social media that shows Luke Combs himself openly wondering if he should release an entire album full of songs about fathers and sons. And I think at the time there was the single out that was kind of a father-son ballad thing. I think that was Huntin' by Yourself. And so I took that social media post where he was wondering if he should release an entire album. It's just a piece of marketing for that one song, and that, Luke Combs would just move on with his life and, do another album down the road or something like that. But wrong I was, because here I was on June the 14th, 2024, just minding my own business. And Luke Combs, the country music megastar, did indeed release an entire album of 12 songs just about fathers and sons, aptly called Fathers and Sons. Okay? So, like any good-hearted, red-blooded American father with sons, I decided to give it a listen. Okay? And I made it approximately 23 seconds into the first song before I was in tears. And that trend continued on and off for the next 40 minutes as I listened to the entire album front to back. And it's right about now that I should go ahead and let you know that, no, I am not going to change the name of this show to Undaunted.Life, a man that cries too much podcast, although it may seem like that here lately, because obviously if you've been listening to the show, just a couple of weeks ago, I got onto the mic and blubbered when I recorded episode 638, Find Guys That'll Help You Bury Your Dog. I got into big detail about my best friend, Roman the Giant, dying and kind of everything that went along with that. And, you know, a lot of you guys actually like that. And a lot of you guys have really like made an impact with you. And here I am talking about Foxhole. Here I am talking about 3 a.m. friends. Here I am talking about, you know, whose car are we going to take, friends? I'm on my way, friends. But somehow I talk about guys that'll help you bury your dog, and it kind of landed with you. So I guess those tears were worth it. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I start talking about some of these songs from this album here in a second, it's going to choke me up for sure. For sure. Because I've listened to this album about a dozen times all the way through since it was released, and I get weepy every time. There's certain songs that get me every time. We'll get into those. There's certain songs that don't get me sometimes and do get me sometimes. And so like, it's just, you know, it's kind of all over the place. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you through the songs on the album. Some of them I'm going to go into, you know, detail on. I'll read some of the lyrics and do whatever. And here's the thing. If you're tempted right now to skip this episode because, you know, you don't like country music, or because you don't have kids, or you only have daughters, just let me tell you, that would be a bad idea. And this is why. Okay. Because all of us are sons. Okay. And just by the data that I do know, most of the guys in my audience listening to this are fathers. That's why. There is something of value here for everyone. In fact, you know, this would probably be best if you have not already listened to this album, Fathers and Sons by Luke Combs. Again, I don't care if you like country music or not. Okay. I have, you know, hits or misses inside of that genre. But go to Apple Music or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen to music, and listen to the entire album, okay? Then I want you to come back to this point in the show and start listening, okay? If you don't want to do that, no problem. I don't care, but that would probably be best. You know, do what you want. So here we go. Let's dig in. Okay, so Fathers and Sons. Right from the top, after listening to each song on the album, it's clear that it's not just 12 songs all about the same stuff, okay? Each song inside of this album kind of strikes a different chord. No pun intended. It has kind of a different theme. So here we'll get into it. So here's the first song. The first song is called Front Door Famous. Okay. The theme of this song is how being famous with people at home is worth more than being famous with people of the world. Okay. So let's go ahead and read the lyrics here. Here's verse 1. I see his face sometimes out there in the crowd, in between the melodies. He's asking me when I'm coming home. After all the lights come on, after all the folks are gone, I hit the road and close my eyes, and I imagine here's the chorus, walking through the front door, hearing Daddy at the top of his lungs, and his feet on the wood floor, running up to give me a hug. Yeah, that's what it's all for. And the spotlight can't replace it. And in a heartbeat, man, I'd trade it, because it ain't got nothing on being front door famous. Okay. And so I'm going to read it, you know, as he's singing it. And so I've even got the tune in my head. So don't worry, guys. I will not sing it to you. But this is a good reminder for a lot of you guys out there, especially if you've got a job, you know, kind of like admittedly a job like this, where you have at least a modicum of fame, where people do recognize you in public. They want to take pictures with you, and, you know, it's awkward every time, but, you know, you want to do right by your audience and honor them and all that. But there are people out there in this world, and you know, people like this, that's what they focus on. They want the attention. They want people to focus on who they are, what they do for a living. They want you to come and ask them for a picture. Like, it's a level of narcissism and self-absorption, which is not healthy. And these are the same people that when the lights do go out and when their career does start to dim a little bit, so do their prospects of, you know, seeing themselves as a positive, healthy, character-filled person. And so this song just reminds us, okay, even if you've got a cool job, even if you're just kind of like a local celebrity, you've got a good business, or maybe you're a local pastor, or people look to you for advice, focus on being front door famous. Okay. So that's song number 1. Now we got song number 2, In Case I Ain't Around. And so if you didn't cry during the first song, you're definitely going to cry during the second song. So the theme of this song is preparing your sons to succeed regardless of your presence. So regardless of if you're there or not, and kind of the implication in the song is not that the dad's a deadbeat, but that the dad's, you know, passed on. So verse 1, I send the check for the lease every January to 1100 Beckham Ridge Road. Have your corn knee high by July, where we hunt the bottom by the White Oak Road. Before you crank the tractor, pump the clutch. I ain't going nowhere no time soon, but just, here's the chorus, in case I ain't around when you get older. I just thought I'd tell you now, so down the road, you're all good to go through the highs and lows and all life's ups and downs. Yeah, that way I'm still here for you somehow in case I ain't around. And so again, there's not as much motion in it whenever I'm just reading it, but when you're hearing him sing it with the fervent nature that he's singing these songs with, you can definitely hit it. But this is one of those things for a lot of guys, and I'll speak from my experience personally. I didn't get a lot of time with my grandfather growing up. There's probably a lot of reasons for that, different familial fights and people preferring this person over that person, but I didn't get to learn a whole lot of lessons from my grandfather. And then even with my father, my dad was capable, knew how to do a lot of things, fix a lot of things, but I wasn't with him often to do a lot of those things. And it wasn't like he was actively keeping me away. I just wasn't included in a lot of those things. And so I missed out on some of that stuff to where it's like, okay, someday you'll need to know how to do this. And also, my father and I have led very different lives, made very different decisions, and it took very different tracks in life. And so a lot of the things that I've experienced are not a lot of things that he's experienced, and vice versa. And so the advice that he's able to give me on the stuff that I'm experiencing is, I guess you could say, not as appropriate or not as specific, I guess would be a better way of looking at it. And so for a lot of you guys out there, the reminder is, hey, you may not always be around. You could suffer a tragedy. You could get sick. Life circumstances could befall you. You've got to make sure that you're driving home lessons to your sons while you still got their entire attention. Okay, song number 3 is called Hunting by Yourself. And so this was kind of the first song that was leaked from the album. And the theme of this one, dude, if you're a hunter at all and you have sons, like, you're going to be blubbering with this one for sure. The theme of this song is, it may be annoying to hunt with your kids, but you'll miss it when it's gone. So here are the lyrics. Verse 1. He ran out of the bedroom about as gung-ho as he could be in his mossy oak. Took the first hunt picture on my phone before he even fell asleep on the way. I held the gun, he held the light, a cup of coffee and a can of Sprite. The stand was only 10 feet high, but on the top of the world that day. I already knew he wouldn't see a thing. Been 3 more times, and it's always the same. Here's the chorus. Because he moves too much and he talks too loud, but I don't mind because I'm finding out that even if it's just time we're killing, it's never felt more like living. They'll make you cuss and wear your patience thin, but next thing you know, they're all grown up and then you're hunting by yourself again. Here's verse 2. Well, I've heard him say these days don't last. I know the years are going to fly fast. Right out the door and never come back, as bad as you want him to. As pretty soon, he'll sit in his own tree, be a bat out of hell with a set of keys, and chasing girls is going to be all he'll want to do. He'll have a lot less time for his old man, so I'm going to soak it up while I still can. Chorus again. When he moves too much and he talks too loud, but I don't mind because I'm finding out that even if it's just time we're killing, it's never felt more like living. They'll make you cuss and wear your patience thin, but next thing you know, they're all grown up and then you're hunting by yourself again. And so these lyrics and that chorus especially, that's what was put into all these videos and just got every man's man hunter across America crying watching these videos, and what drove a lot of people's attention to this album. And here's what it did for me specifically. As I've talked about a lot on this show, I didn't grow up in a family that hunted. And so I hunted for the first time in my mid-20s. And then by my early 30s, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a hunter. I have to figure this out. And so here I am in my 20s and 30s making mistakes hunting that, 5 and 6 and 7-year-old boys had, made and long, stopped making, right? And so I'm trying to do that, but I'm doing that for the benefit of my children. I want my sons, James and Eli, to know how to hunt. I want them to be comfortable hunting. I want them to be around me. I want them to be around other experienced hunters. I want them to see these different circumstances and see the value in it, not just for procuring meat for your family, but also just all the life lessons that you learn, the patience, just the being capable in certain areas and all those types of things. And I've thought about it before. Like, I don't like when my kids don't do stuff that I want them to do, right? So that should be reflective of all you fathers out there. And I'm very much so in the Jordan Peterson camp of don't allow your children to do anything that makes you dislike them. But after listening to this song, I guarantee you this is what I did. I went and told my wife. So my oldest son is 4, so he can't sit still and be quiet for 15 seconds. I told her, I'm going to take James hunting this season. Okay, so do it on a day when it's not super duper cold and it's not raining or something like that, and go out there, with my rifle or bow with an expectation that we're not going to see anything and we're not certainly going to be able to shoot anything, because he's going to move too much. He's going to talk too loud, but I'm not going to mind, because one day he's not going to want to do that with dad. Okay. And so what I'm going to focus on is making a core memory with my son at a very early age that dad took him on a ride out to the country. We got to stay in a cabin. We got to ride in an all-terrain vehicle, and we got to go to either a covered blind or a non-covered blind. And hopefully we get to see something, even if it's just a squirrel or some birds. But who the heck knows? We might even get something on the ground. So that's something I'm focusing on. Song number 4 is called Little Country Boys. I won't read any of the lyrics of this one, but the theme is if you live in the country, just let your boys be little country boys. And so if you did have a country upbringing or you live in the country now, that's a great song. Song number 5, Whoever You Turn Out to Be. The theme of this song is love your sons regardless of what they end up being interested in or what, life decisions they make, assuming they don't become like a, weed dealer or, murder somebody or something like that. But here are the lyrics. First one. A hand-me-down F-150 might not be the tank you empty, burning gasoline the day you turn 16. And just because dusty boots and camouflage are in your roots don't mean you ever got to wear them. If that ain't you, I don't care. Yeah, I used to love to sling that dirt up on them rural routes, but God might have a different map dot plan for you mapped out. Here's the chorus. So what if you don't stick around this little town that raised you? So what if you don't cut your teeth on Junior Jones and Waylon? Great line, by the way. Now, it might work out that you don't turn out anything like me, but I'll love whoever you turn out to be. So the lesson here is pretty obvious. For a lot of us guys, we would love for our sons to be into the things that we're into. Would I love it if my sons were into jiu-jitsu and wrestling and baseball and became big St. Louis Cardinals fans and loved podcasts and metal music and all that type of stuff? Yeah. And I, am going to expose them to things like that. Yeah, I want them to go hunting with me and I want them to do all these cool things that I like to do. But dads have to be okay with the fact that your sons are going to be your own sons. And the more pressure you put on them to conform to a certain way of life or a certain team that they need to root for, any of those types of things, you might actually be driving them away. That's what I'm going to be doing in terms of wrestling, baseball, and jiu-jitsu. Those are the 3 sports I've played the most over my entire life. In my youth, it was mainly baseball. And so our boys are going to be required to play sports, but dad's not going to pick the sports. Okay. They're not going to play football because all the head injuries and all that crazy stuff. But in Edmond, we have every single other sport that you could imagine, including like ice hockey and lacrosse and like everything that you could possibly imagine in Edmond, Oklahoma. And so that's going to be available to my boys. And so I want them to be into what they're into. I want them to like the music that they're into. I want them to get the haircut that they want at a certain age, within reason and things like that. And if they don't turn out exactly how I want them to turn out, I need to be able to love them anyway. All right. Song number 6, Remember Him That Way. So the theme of this one is remembering your father for the best and strongest version that he ever was. So here's the lyrics. First one. There's an old man and a lazy boy, TV on a Western, fast asleep. Gray in his hair, at least what's left, but the heart of a lion beating in his chest. And there's a little more slow in his go and a little less rock in his roll these days. Here's the chorus. But I remember him 10 feet tall and bulletproof, throwing me a ball in cowboy boots. A whistle and the dogs start running, a whisper and mama starts blushing, a wrench in his hand and a beer in the other. God couldn't make a man any tougher. And that S on his chest is starting to fade, but I'll always remember him that way. And so for some of you, that description during the chorus of a father, that is something that you're very familiar with. And that's something that you think about. And for a lot of us, when a man ages out of his peak masculinity, I guess you could say, and for every man, it's just a little bit different. And it's a little bit, the timing of that is all over the place. That doesn't mean you have to only look at the man as in the version he is today. You can also look at who he was when he was at his best and strongest. And try to remember your father in that way. Now, for some of you, I know this is going to be a little bit of a rough subject because maybe you never met your father. Maybe your father was an absolute POS. Maybe your father was just not someone you would ever want to emulate in any way, shape, or form. But for those of you that did get to have your father, perhaps even still have your father, you might be tempted to look at who they are today or some of the bad decisions that they've made and try to see them through that prism. And I understand the temptation as a pessimist myself. But if you can look at your dad for the best version of who he was, that's probably going to be better for you overall. Song number 7, The Man He Sees in Me. Okay, so big drink of water. Around this time in the album, I'm still really enjoying it, okay? But the tears on my face have dried a little bit. Good songs, but they're not really hitting me the same way. I'm just listening to the music at this point. And then this song comes on and the waterworks start again. Okay, so the theme of The Man He Sees in Me is hoping that we could ever live up to be the kind of man that our little boys think that we are. Okay. So here we go. Try to hold it together. Verse 1, he's Spider-Man in Walmart boots and a camouflage hat with a baby blue Zebco that gets hung up every cast. He thinks he's learning fishing from the man that taught Bill dance. And I think as I untangle it and put it in his hands, chorus, I hope he never finds out that I didn't hang the moon and I've never scared a monster out the closet of his room. One day between him leaving home and driving on my knee, maybe I'll finally be the man he sees in me. Verse 2. He waves that blanket like a checkered flag pulling off of the interstate, with a Happy Meal cup held high like I won the big race. When we get home, his mind is blown when I untie his shoes, and he smiles and says, "Daddy, there ain't nothing you can't do." Chorus. Well, I hope he never finds out that I didn't hang the moon, and I've never scared a monster out the closet of his room. Someday between him leaving home and driving on my knee, but maybe I'll finally be the man he sees in me. And so this is right in the crosshairs for where I am right now. Okay. My 4-year-old and 2-year-old sons think that, okay, literally last night during prayer, which I should really record my son's prayers, James's prayers, because they're all over the place. They're typically hilarious. But in the prayer, he thanks God for me being the strongest man. Like the strongest man. He doesn't know Hathor Bjornsson exists. He doesn't know whoever just won the world's strongest man. I can't remember his name. Some dude from the UK. He doesn't think that Dad is the strongest man in the world. Dad has the biggest muscles in the world. Dad can jump higher than anybody else. Dad can do all that. And he's very impressed whenever I cook something or make fire happen. Like I'll let him hold my cigar torch and hit the button. And he's just like, "Oh my gosh, Dad." He thinks I made the fire. You know what I'm talking about? And so imagine if we could live up to that. Because as we all know, and some of you already know this very, very well, one day your sons are going to think they know a thing or two, right? Just like I did with my dad. We think we're going to know a thing or two. Our dad's dumb. Our dad doesn't understand. Our dad's just an old timer. He doesn't really get things in this day and age. Your son rather, is going to be less impressed with you than he is right now. But I want to extend this part. I don't want him to have extended adolescence and just treat him as my little boy the entire time. But that process of him being impressed with who Dad is, I want that to be there for a long time. Not because I need the ego boost, but because he thinks the best of me, because he's seen some bad. He's seen Dad fly off the handle. He's seen Dad use bad words. He's seen Dad get angry when he didn't need to get angry. He's had to have Dad come and apologize to him and ask him for forgiveness for, punishing him too strongly or getting, very aggressive with him. And I mean that verbally, like to where, he gets upset and those types of things. We've all been there as dads. And so I want him to constantly see me in the best light. It goes back to that song where you're talking about remember him that way, where I want him to remember me in the way that is positive and encouraging overall. All right, song number 8. All I ever do is leave. Okay, so I make it through the last song, okay? And then I get to this song and get punched directly in the tear ducts right over again. So this song is from the perspective of a son whose father is gone a lot. Yeah. So here we go. Here's the theme. Your sons may not understand all the details, but their perspective is still important. Okay, so here's the lyrics. Verse 1, worn out stitches on a baseball up against the wall. Me and myself trying to play catch because Daddy ain't home yet. I was Batman, Robin, and the Joker too. It was Gotham City lonesome in the living room. And Mama would say, "You pray because your daddy's going to be late." Chorus. But the lights stayed on somehow, and love filled up my house. Yeah, life ain't always what it seems, because I thought all he ever did was leave. Verse 2, but somebody played Tooth Fairy, left the cash, took out the trash, made Mama feel pretty, put a dent in the whiskey. There were tiptoe prayers and midnight kisses, I love yous and little boy wishes for Saturdays where we could play all day. But the lights stayed on somehow, and love filled up my little house. Yeah, life ain't always what it seems, because I thought all he ever did was leave. Okay, so with this one, I travel for work. I go places to speak. I go places to record and be recorded on podcasts. I go do jujitsu. I'll do little men's trips. I go hunt and things like that. And, you'll have those times whenever your kids are just hanging onto your legs. They don't want you to leave and they don't realize, look, I'm just going to the store, right? They don't realize, look, I'm going to go to jujitsu. I'll be back in a couple hours, or, hey, I'll see you in the morning, because you'll be in bed by the time I get back. But you don't want your kids to only think that all you ever did was leave. But at the same time, they're children. They don't understand how the bills get paid in the house. They don't even understand the concept of bills. They don't know how money is made. They don't understand the value of money yet. They don't know why mom has to leave sometimes and why dad has to leave sometimes and why mom and dad have to leave sometimes together and they get left with somebody else that isn't mom nor dad, right? They may not understand those things, but their perspective is important. You need to let them know you are still important, but I've got to go do this other thing right now, whether that's trying to procure meat on a hunt, going and doing an event where you're going to get paid, any of those types of things. But one thing that I've started to do is I'm starting to deputize my boys on the way out the door. Okay. Because I always told James, hey, protect your little brother. We're in the parking lot. And I'm like, hey, hold your hand. We got to protect little Bubba's hand. And here he is. He's looking around for every car. And if there's a car in the zip code, he's letting dad know about it so that his little brother can be safe. Right. I was even, at the doctor, in little Eli was getting vaccines and James was in there with us. And I thought James was going to grab that syringe and stab the nurse in the heart with it, because after Eli got his first vaccine and was crying and, kind of apoplectic, James was furious. He was like crying, angry, pissed off, tears. And he was yelling, stop hurting my brother, just going crazy. So he kind of has that sheepdog in him. But now I'm telling him whenever I leave the house, hey, you're the man of the house now. Protect mom and your brother until I get back. Protect the dog until you get back, those types of things. And you can kind of see like, all right, he's with it. He's looking around. He's looking for threats or things like that. I don't want him to think that all I ever do is leave, but I want him to be ready if I do leave to let him know he's the man of the house. All right, the next three, I won't read any of the lyrics, but number 9 is called Plant the Seed. The theme of this one is life is short, so be thankful that God gave you the time that he did to plant some seeds in your boys and to watch them grow. Song number 10 is Ride Around Heaven All Day. This is like the most super duper like country song on this. This is like country music theology, like all wrapped up into a song. This is a song from a perspective of a grandson having a dream, and then he got to take a truck drive around heaven with his grandfather. Okay, so there you go, super country song. And then song number 11 is My Old Man Was Right. The theme of this one is sometimes our fathers were right, but we couldn't see it when we were young. I think all of us have been there, and some of us are still currently there. But then we get to the last song on the album. Okay, it's called Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So we're at the end of the album. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but I read the track title of the last track called Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And I immediately get excited because I think, okay, great. Oh, it's just going to be a song about a father taking his son to a baseball game. I love my sons. I love baseball. I love America. I like hot dogs. What could possibly go wrong? Well, this track, I'm telling you guys, is easily the most heartbreaking track on the entire album. It is absolutely devastating. It's from the perspective of a young boy whose parents are obviously split up. They're divorced, and he's confused why his life is the way that it is. So I've held together most of the time. So we'll see if I can get through this, because I feel for the young boy in this, because in a lot of ways I was this boy. And so here's verse 1. I caught a foul ball up in the bleachers and the shortstop autographed it. I kept it on the dresser with every day that passes. I've been throwing it to myself. I've got pretty good at catching. I just called to say I miss you and make sure that you know that it's my birthday pretty soon. And all I want is for you to, here's the chorus, take me out to the ball game, pick me up at the house. What's this every other weekend thing even all about? Because mama said she loves you and in some ways always will. I guess maybe things are different now, but daddy, can't you still take me out to the ball game? And this is the second verse. It's like, oh gosh. All right, second verse. I'd sure love to go again. Seems like it's been a long time, or seems like it's been so long. If we could get some tickets Friday night, me, you, and maybe mom. Because I feel like it's my fault that you two ain't together. I'm so sorry I was bad. I promise I'll be better. Because I just want to see you. And if you come back, you don't have to take me out to the ball game. Pick me up at the house. What's this every other weekend thing even all about? Because mama said she loves you and in some ways always will. I guess maybe things are different now, but daddy, can't you still take me out to the ball game? Here's the bridge. We'd eat hot dogs in the same seats. In the 7th inning, we'd sing, take me out to the ball game. Pick me up at the house. What's this every other weekend thing even all about? Because mama said she loves you and in some ways always will. I guess maybe things are different now, but daddy, can't you still take me out to the ball game? Take me out to the ball game. So this poor young boy thinks his parents are split because of him, because he was bad, because he asked his dad if he would go to the ball game. You can see in the second verse, first verse, he's so excited. Dad, can you just take me to a ball game? Second verse, he's like, hey, if you just come back, you don't even have to take me to the ball game. Oh boy, just an absolutely heartbreaking song. And that's the story of some of you guys in this audience. That's a story that I recognize. That's a story that I level with and understand. So you might be wondering at this point, before we get to the quick hitters, why would I take you through all this? Because I say this with as little hyperbole as I can muster. This is one of the most important pieces of entertainment I think that's ever been created for fathers and sons. I'm serious. Just imagine the pitch meeting for Luke Combs. So he goes in to talk to his record producer and he's like, hey, yeah, I'd like to do a whole album of songs just about fathers and sons. And the, executive's got to be like, yeah, Luke, a song about fathers and sons. That'd be great. And then Luke's like, no, not just one song. I'm going to do a full album. So, 10 to 12 songs, an LP about fathers and sons and nothing else. Executive's like a full album of just songs about fathers and sons. Yeah. Well, what about beer and pretty girls and tractors in America? And, we'll sneak some of that in there, record executive guy, but the main theme is just fathers and sons. The record executive had to just looked at him like, this is completely confusing. But for all intents and purposes, this was a huge risk for Luke Combs. Again, it's like him, Morgan Wallen, I guess Jelly Roll, even though the dude can't really even sing. And Lainey Wilson, maybe those are is that like the top 4 right now for country music? I don't really know. I don't follow it that closely, but Luke Combs is up there, right? I guess Luke Bryan, for those of you that I need to mention Luke Bryan. All right. So it's those people, right? So this is kind of a risk because you're really segmenting your audience here. This isn't just fun and red cups and boats and tractors and whatever, all that kind of stuff. But I would put this album in terms of products from entertainment, the entertainment world, that are essential to consume for fathers and sons, alongside movies like Field of Dreams or The Lion King or The Pursuit of Happiness. There really isn't something else like this that I know of in the modern music industry. But above all else, this album has real life lessons and applications for us. That's what I tried to elucidate as I was going through the tracks. So if you're a grandfather, of course. If you're a father of sons, of course. If you're a father of daughters, you're still a son, right? And there are lessons here that apply to your daughter. If you're not a father, you're still a son. And there are lessons here that will apply to you someday when you, Lord willing, have children. And even if you're one of our lady listeners right now, this applies to you as well, because you will never know. You could never know what it's like to feel like a father or a son. Just like none of us dudes will ever truly know what it's like to feel like a mother or a daughter. But it's important for you to have a glimpse into the mind of a man as he sees through the eyes of a young boy, or as he sees through the eyes of a man onto his young boy. So hopefully that wasn't too painful for you guys. It's a fantastic album. I highly, highly recommend you go and check it out. Hey guys, real quick, as you've likely heard me talk about on the show before, it took me forever before I started taking supplements of any kind. I was always nervous about taking like whey protein and creatine or really anything beyond that because I was just afraid of what was in the product and if it was going to like give me cancer someday or something like that. And I was always scared of these companies, these supplement companies, just cutting corners and using low quality products and eventually putting things in their products that could cause problems for me and my body. So I've always wanted to partner up with an American company that uses high quality ingredients in their supplements. And that's why I want to remind you guys that we are partnered with Jocko Fuel. So Jocko Fuel is Jocko Willink's American-based supplement company. So what are some of my favorite products that they make that I also use? They have the best tasting greens powder on the market. I love the peach flavor myself. They also make whey protein powder. The banana cream is my favorite. They make energy drinks, the Jocko Go energy drinks. My favorite is currently a tie between their iced tea lemonade and their pink lemonade flavors. I also use their Creel oil, their creatine, their vitamin D, and also their sleep aids. And they make a bunch of other stuff like ready to drink protein cookies, which are actually really delicious. My boys even like them, pre-workout powder, and much, much more. Guys, if you take your health and wellness seriously, then you've got to put high quality products in your body. Try Jocko Fuel out today by going to www.jockofuel.com. That's jockofuel.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. Again, that's jockofuel.com, promo code Undaunted to get 10% off of your order. All right, well, we made it through that. Let's get into the quick hitters bonanza, guys. We got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm not going to be able to give a ton of detail on each of these. I'll just give you a lot of big thoughts. But Planned Parenthood giving away free abortions and vasectomies during the Democratic National Convention. This is according to Fox News on August the 17th. Planned Parenthood is offering more than a free t-shirt or sticker at the DNC this coming week. The organization will offer free vasectomies, medication abortion, and emergency contraception. Planned Parenthood Great Rivers of St. Louis announced in an X post that a bus is headed to the DNC in Chicago on August the 19th and 20th to offer the free services. So right to my big takeaway on this one. But yeah, sure. The Democratic Party isn't the party of death and abortion. They're not the party of child sacrifice. Because a lot of people said, well, wait a minute. The DNC didn't hire this local Planned Parenthood to come and do this. Guys, they were in coordination. Like, come on. Planned Parenthood didn't show up to the RNC. They showed up to the DNC. Why? Because the Democratic National Convention, the Democratic Party, is as pro-Planned Parenthood as you could possibly be. They love this organization. If it were up to them, this organization would be even bigger because they would be killing even more children and sacrificing even more children to Moloch. Like that's exactly what they want. So I'm really tired of these Christians that are trying to convince me that, well, we'll get more into that here in a second with Donald Trump. But you have a lot of people that are just trying to separate, and you even have the Democratic Party trying to soften and seem more moderate on the abortion issue. But this proves it. There were human beings, image bearers of God, that lost their lives so that Planned Parenthood and the Democratic Party could make a point at a convention, at a political rally. It's absolutely sickening and satanic. All right, next quick hitter here. Donald Trump attempting to tarnish his pro-life legacy. So a couple of different headlines here, different stories. According to NPR, this is from August the 16th. In a Friday post on Truth Social, Trump, whose appointees to the U.S. Supreme Court helped overturn a constitutional right to an abortion, said, "My administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights." So Trump has co-opted a leftist viewpoint and language, and he's using reproductive rights to talk about abortion. And this is from August the 29th from floridapolitics.com. This is egregious. Former President Donald Trump says he'll vote in favor of Florida's abortion referendum that will appear on the ballot through the state for the November 5th election. NBC News reporter Dasha Burns on her X feed highlighted video of Trump telling her that he would vote to support the ballot initiative. He said, according to Burns, that he thinks Florida's ban on abortion after 6 weeks is too restrictive. "I think the 6 weeks is too short. There has to be more time," Trump said. "So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?" Burns asked. "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks," Trump replied. Florida's ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy went into effect in May of this year. The statewide referendum, called Amendment 4, would alter the state's constitution to protect abortion until viability, in effect negating the 6-week limitation on abortions that Governor Ron DeSantis signed. So here's my big takeaway on this one. Now, I think Trump is fighting an uphill battle to win the White House anyways, for a lot of different reasons. But this is just political negligence. Absolute flummoxing political negligence from him and the people that are in his camp. Because what he's doing is he is trading Christian conservative evangelical voters for secular independent voters in a handful of states. Because again, this really comes down to Pennsylvania, but you've also got Wisconsin and Michigan. You've got Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Okay. The odds are that Trump wins Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. But if he doesn't win one of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan, he loses the election. Okay. So he's looking at a small population of secular independent voters in a handful of states. And he's saying, Christians, conservatives, evangelicals, you'll vote with me anyway. So I'm just going to do this. It's incredibly, incredibly stupid. I really don't understand the move. But guys, believe me, I'm very pissed off about what Trump and the Republicans are doing right now on the issue of abortion. They removed abortion from the RNC platform. They've removed it every time Trump has talked about it. He's talked about it not even as a moderate, but as a liberal. That's basically how he's talking about it. But even though I'm very pissed off, even though this is my one issue, if you're going to be a one issue voter, we have to be realistic. His administration is going to govern way more in a pro-life manner than would the Harris-Walz administration, for sure. Because again, you're not hiring one person when you vote for president. You're hiring an entire federal government apparatus, 15 to 20,000 people that person will have hands in appointing or getting into their jobs. The Harris-Walz administration would be the most pro-abortion, pro-baby murder administration in the history of our country. Again, need I remind you, Kamala Harris is the first and only sitting vice president or president to go to an event at an abortion facility. She went and toured an abortion facility. I believe it was in Minnesota. She's the only person to do that, and that wasn't an accident. Also, if you look at her generic ads, which you can't basically escape them right now because they're all over YouTube and all over, TikTok and all these other different places. In her generic ad, she's talking about abortion. Now, she talks about reproductive rights and a woman's right to choose and that kind of stuff. So it's all colloquialisms or euphemisms, rather. But You don't make abortion front and center in your campaign if you don't think it's important. If it's not important to you. And you want to talk about Governor Walz in Minnesota? He signed into law the most liberal abortion. It's up there with the most liberal abortion laws in any state in the union. Okay. So it's abortion up to the moment of birth. And also he went against any type of thing which would have protected a child that made it, that survived a botched abortion. Okay. So if an infant is born after an abortion, the abortion was not successful, there's going to be no criminal or civil consequences for these health providers, right? Or you could call them that, for these murders in this moment. They're either going to allow the baby to expire there on the table, or they're going to actively in the life of this child now residing geographically outside the womb. So you might be pissed off at Donald Trump. I am pissed off at Donald Trump as well. You might be pissed off at the RNC and the Republican establishment. I am also pissed off at that. But you cannot just not vote, especially if you're in one of those states that I mentioned earlier. Again, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. You can't just sit on your hands because he's not saying all the words that you would prefer, because both sides right now are trying to seem moderate on the abortion issue. Because Harris knows that they are way too left-leaning for anyone that's even mildly moderate, and Trump and Vance don't want to seem as if they can't moderate on the issue of abortion. But we know for a fact that Harris and Walz, as soon as they get into office, will run to the left on that issue. They've shown their willingness to do so, and they will do so. And all indications show that Donald Trump and Vance and the entire government apparatus will move towards the more conservative side, the more pro-life side. Okay. So don't just say, I'm going to stick my flag in the ground and I'm not going to support this candidate because he didn't say words that I liked. We have to be realistic. We have to vote for the candidate that is going to protect more image bearers of God. All right, next quick hitter here, a Christian news site saying that Christians should support abortion. So this is according to BaptistNews.com on August the 25th. So here's the article title, Why Christians Should Support Reproductive Justice, Including Abortion Access. So here's some highlights from this piece of dreck. Number one, reproductive justice is about whole persons whom God loves and tells us to love and care for as well. Okay, so there's no regard for the baby here. Number two, abortion is not a sin. Imagine the theological gymnastics you would have to do to Cirque du Soleil your way into thinking that. And number three, we can lower abortion rates without making abortion inaccessible. How are we going to do that? They don't exactly elucidate that. But here's the author's bio of this article. Susan M. Shaw. She's got we'll get there in a second. She's a professor of women and gender and sexuality studies at Oregon State University in Oregon. She also is an ordained Baptist minister. She is an ordained Baptist minister and holds a master's and doctoral degrees from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Her most recent book is called Intersectional Theology, an Introductory Guide. And as no surprise to anybody, she's got a really, really short, spiky haircut. And I don't know exactly what her persuasion is, but it wouldn't be an entire shock if she had played college softball and now lives with a woman. It's just going to go out there and go out on a limb. But here's a big takeaway on this one. Satan's going to Satan, y'all. It is to his tremendous benefit that there are so many gullible, moronic people out there, because there are Christians that will read this article and they're going to be like, well, look, it's from BaptistNews.com. So it's obviously got to be, biblical and defensible. And they're going to be like, well, maybe abortion isn't a sin. Gosh, I did a word search in the Bible and the word abortion didn't pop up. So it couldn't possibly be that, maybe God, maybe God, and then, they're going to try to work it out. They're going to try to figure out a way to make abortion not the killing of an innocent living human being, but to make it something else, like, oh, it's just the stopping of a pregnancy or the removal of a clump of cells or some other euphemistic way to describe ripping a child of God limb from limb, right? And you have people like this, what's her name, Susan Shaw, and other people like her that are just fine being used as a tool of Satan. And again, I have to go back to this for things like this, for these nefarious worldviews to take hold. You need conscious nefarious actors and you need useful idiots. I'm not sure which one Susan Shaw is, but she's doing the work of Satan here by trying to convince Christians that indeed abortion is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And if you're a good Christian, you should support it too. And isn't it so interesting We're a couple of months away from an election, and you've got an article like this coming out. They could have written this article a year ago. Why didn't they write it a year ago? It's because they want stupid, ignorant Christians that are very gullible and easily swayed to go into the Kamala Harris camp. That's exactly why they're doing this. Next quick hitter here, a website tracking how conservative or liberal U.S. senators are deleted their page ranking Kamala Harris as the most liberal of all 100 U.S. senators. So this is according to End Wokeness on Twitter on July the 24th. Breaking, GovTrack just deleted their 2019 page that ranked Kamala Harris as the most liberal of all 100 senators. So the big takeaway here on this is apparently Kamala Harris never existed until she politically assassinated her boss a few weeks ago. She was never in any other office. She technically wasn't even the vice president. She definitely didn't help, Joe Biden in the Biden-Harris administration, which Joe Biden even said over and over and over he would always combine himself with Kamala Harris, but apparently she just didn't exist. So GovTrack deleted their page, but the internet is forever, and so people found the page of the 100 U.S. senators, before 2020, when she was in office in 2019 as a senator. Of those 100, she was the most liberal, more liberal than Bernie Sanders. That in GovTrack looks at voting records, right? They don't look at what you espouse at a political rally or what you put on t-shirts. They look at your voting record. She was the most liberal of all the 100 senators. And now the mainstream media is in cahoots with the Democratic Party, trying to convince you that Kamala Harris not only is an accomplished individual, which she is not only that she got every job in her entire life because she warranted the job and because she earned it, as opposed to just failing upwards after she started by basically being a whore for a guy 30 years her senior. No. None of that's true. And no, she's not liberal. She's just kind of that quirky aunt with a weird laugh that, she just wants you to be joyful and she wants you to be happy, right? That's what she wants. And she's moderate. Don't believe what Trump and those crazy people, those MAGA people over there, those maggots, don't believe what those people are saying about Kamala. Like, she is America's crazy aunt, and she should definitely be at the levers of control. That's what all of this is. And, the fix is in with the mainstream media. The fix is in with these different states with their drop boxes and their ballot harvesting and things like that. And then you have websites like this basically trying to erase the past, in a very sinister way to pull off something like that. This is very 1984-ish. And so in an Orwellian sense, they're trying to get rid of the past so that we can't see Kamala Harris as she truly is. It's all part of the fix. Our next quick hitter here, Meta CEO and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg revealing that the Biden-Harris administration has pressured his company to censor dissenting content. So this is according to the Christian Post on August the 28th. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg claimed in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee on Monday that the Biden administration pressured his company to effectively censor Facebook content related to COVID-19 and the Hunter Biden laptop. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it, Zuckerberg wrote in a letter to House Judiciary Committee Chairman Rep. Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio. I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again, he added. So obviously this is a big admission from him. A lot of people are like, oh, good for him for doing this. But here's my big takeaway. Mark Zuckerberg obviously has an angle here. He is not a hero, nor is he a victim in this story. I don't buy that for 1 second. So I'm not exactly sure. I can't really read between the lines here as to what exactly the angle is from Mark Zuckerberg. But he's saying, look, we put money into the last election and we're not going to do that this time. And we're not going to, downgrade content via the algorithm until a fact checker has been able to give us confirmation that it's real. We're not going to do that anymore. But he's not doing that out of the goodness of his heart, guys. He is a political actor. He is a leftist, liberal political actor. And I guarantee you, if he can move the needle just a little bit to ensure that Kamala Harris gets into office, he would, and he perhaps still might. So I don't know if he's just running pre-interference for himself. Yeah, it's great that he wrote the letter, but sorry, I just don't buy it. All right, next quick hitter here. The United States government losing track of tens of thousands of illegal immigrant children. So this is according to ABC News on August the 20th. The Department of Homeland Security's internal watchdog says it has uncovered an urgent issue with how immigration officials handle cases involving unaccompanied migrant children, warning in a new report that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency has been unable to keep track of all unaccompanied minors released from government custody. The interim report sent to Congress on Tuesday and obtained by ABC News said that in the past 5 years, more than 32,000 unaccompanied migrant children failed to appear for their immigration court hearings, and ICE was not able to account for all of their locations. By law, the Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for the care of unaccompanied migrant children. So after they are initially taken into custody by U.S. authorities, it is ICE's role to ensure their timely and safe transfer to HHS, which then often places them in shelters or qualified sponsors' homes. So here's my big takeaway on this one. And this is absolutely heartbreaking, but it's certainly true. These children are currently being trafficked for sex and or labor, and it was all facilitated by the Biden-Harris administration. That's the reality. So if you go back to some different movies that have come out recently, documentaries, they will say that there will be a child that will show up to the border. They will have a piece of paper. They speak no English, and it'll have a phone number. And it'll say, call this person. And the Border Patrol people or the ICE people will call this individual and say, hey, I've got little Rosa here. Is this your niece or whatever? And then, the person will say, yes, they are. And then the United States government and you, the taxpayer, will pay for that child to be put on a plane or a bus to this individual. There's no vetting of this individual. There is no understanding of who they are as it pertains to this child. They're just sent there. And then these kids disappear, as with a lot of these immigrants that come through the ports of entry and say, oh, I'm seeking asylum from nothing exactly, but I'm seeking asylum. They give them a court date that's 4 or 5 years down the road to show up. And, oh, don't you know it? These people just don't show up. But these children are being sent here by their parents. Some of them have been convinced, oh, we're going to give your kid a better life. We're definitely going to get them to your family that's in America. But the coyotes and the cartels are getting these people to their traffickers in the United States, and they are being trafficked again for sex and or labor. And when you have a wide open border and you basically tell the cartels and you basically tell anyone throughout the entire world, because it's not just Central and South America, but you tell anyone through the entire world, look, the southern border is open for business. You will not be stopped at the border. You will not be shot at the border. You can just come in and you can really come and go out of this country as you please, right? And even if you get deported, which is not something that really happens under Biden-Harris that much, you can just easily come right back, right? You can always just make your way right back. And when you let the entire world know that we are not taking care of our southern border, that we are not guarding our southern border, you are making the children susceptible to things just like this. Because you have these evil men in Central and South America that are sending these children through because they know that they will make money on the transfer and they will make money on the other side, again, via sex or via labor. And again, with a lot of these children, I know this is a little bit macabre, but hey, it's a man's podcast, so we're going to get into the rough subjects. A lot of these children, these small children, that are sold multiple times a day to be raped by pedophilic men, a lot of these children will be so destroyed physically that they're discarded after they become no longer an asset to be used to make money. So what I'm saying is that they're penetrated so violently, so often, and it's destroying their internal organs and different things to where it's going to cost too much money to get this child nursed back to health. And what exactly are you going to tell the people at the ER that happened to this person that has, violent anal fissures and is, bleeding from all their orifices in their body? Well, you're not going to take them to the ER. So you're just going to shoot them. You're just going to kill them. You're just going to bury them in the desert. And that's what's happening. And that's what's happening because of what Biden and Harris have done with our southern border and what every other Democratic administration has done, except for most recently the Trump and Pence administration. And so think about that when you're voting as well. If you have any heart or conscience for these children, perhaps don't vote for an administration that's going to continue to allow something like that to happen on their watch. All right, next quick hitter here. 20 illegal immigrants attempting to hijack an elementary school bus in San Diego. This is according to Fox 5 San Diego on August the 29th. In a disturbing series of events in San Diego County, California, illegal immigrants attempted to board 2 school buses filled with children from the Jamul del Zura Union School District. The incidents, which occurred on different days along Highway 94, have raised significant safety concerns among local authorities, parents, and the broader community. So specifically with this story, the parents were near the bus. And so the parents kind of helped facilitate getting these people away from the bus and keeping them from hijacking this bus. This school district is informing their bus drivers now to skip bus stops or to skip, stops altogether that have immigrants at them. Illegal immigrants. They're just saying, oh, just skip that. Just go right past it. So a couple of takeaways on this story. The first one, try that in a small town. Okay? Because you want to see the local populace rise up against people that are not legally supposed to be able to be here. Again, we're told these people are just downtrodden. They're experiencing political persecution, or they're just trying to make a good life for their family. Well, why are they at the same time using firearms or any type of weapon to hijack a bus full of children? Do they need a ride? Were they just going to sit on the bus and sing songs with the kids? Or was there something more nefarious afoot? And big takeaway number 2 is when your federal government's policy is open borders, this is always something that was bound to happen. And guys, it's only a matter of time until a busload of children are taken as hostages by one of these pieces of human debris. And then what? There's a standoff. Maybe they kill a few kids in the process. Maybe all the kids are killed in the process. Maybe we tell the racist white cops that are just looking for people of color to murder, we tell them to stand down, that we're not going to follow this bus because, we don't want them to drive it and kind of careen it off the road. So we're just not going to deal with it. And then these children just disappear. They become sex slaves. They just become labor slaves. This is what we've allowed happen to our country, people. When are we going to stop it? November 5th is going to be one of those options to be able to stop it. All right, next one here, a Secret Service agent leaving her post defending former President Trump in order to breastfeed her child in a private room. Okay, this is according to the New York Post on August the 17th. The United States Secret Service is investigating allegations a female agent left her post at a campaign event for former President Trump this week to breastfeed her child. The side agent went to do one final sweep of the walking route and found the agent breastfeeding her child in a room that is supposed to be set aside for important Secret Service official work, i.e. potential emergency related to the president, Crabtree wrote. Crabtree was one of the people that gave the comments. So this was after Donald Trump's head was almost turned into a canoe in Pennsylvania in July. And then not that far thereafter, a Secret Service agent, as opposed to being where they're supposed to be to potentially prevent somebody from killing President Trump, is not doing her job. She's breastfeeding. So there's a lot of issues here. There's certainly a lot of issues here. One of them is, I think it's safe to say that the Secret Service actually kind of sucks. And I don't mean these individual people suck. Some of them probably suck. But in terms of doing their job, they suck, because we only know that they sucked on July the 13th in Pennsylvania because Trump was almost murdered. But how many other times could somebody have murdered the person that was under their care and protection because they're so inadequate and so stupid and so terrible at their jobs? But my big takeaway on this one, and I've talked about this before, not a popular opinion, but I don't really care. Women should be mothers, not field officers for any kind of police department or personal protection agency. Okay? This woman should not have been a field agent for the Secret Service. Okay? And I'm not saying mothers can't work jobs. I'm not saying mothers have to stay home and just try to be pioneer woman. If that's what you decide to do, great. If that's not what you decide to do, great. I don't honestly care. But this woman should be at home caring for her child. And yet she's in a job where she has to use her body to potentially throw on top of a presidential candidate to take a bullet. That's part of your job. You have to agree to die in the place of the person you're protecting to be a Secret Service agent. So not only do I think that she probably wouldn't have made that decision to put her body on top of Donald Trump's if that's what was required of her, but now you're putting a woman, a mother of a young child, in harm's way. That child needs its mother. It also needs its father. But we live in a world where wombs are significantly more valuable than sperm is, right? I've used this example before, but let's say you've got a tribe that's 50 women and 50 men, and another tribe comes over and they kill all of the women except one and leave all the men alive. That people group is over with because there's only one womb, and you're not going to be able to repopulate that people group. But if you flip it and you have one man that survives and 50 women survive, that man is going to be busy, but that people group will survive because there are 50 available wombs for his sperm to connect with an egg to create a one-celled zygote, right? And so wombs are more important for little children. Women, their mothers, are way more important. And this woman is in this job. Again, most men aren't capable of doing those jobs. Most men shouldn't be Secret Service agents or police department officers that are actually out there on the beat. If you want to be an officer that is in the office, that is doing managerial stuff or any type of coordination of logistics, that makes a lot of sense. But to be in in an environment where you're going to have to use your physical body potentially to protect a male that is way bigger than you, and or to use your physical body to stop a threat coming at the person that you're in charge of protecting. We need no women in those jobs whatsoever. It's ridiculous and farcical. All right, next one here. A new law in Iraq that would allow grown men to marry 9-year-old girls. So this is according to Time magazine on August the 9th. An amendment to Iraq's 1959 personal status law was officially proposed in the Iraqi parliament on August the 4th. The draft law could theoretically make it legal for girls as young as 9 years old to get married. The bill was proposed by Iraqi MP Ra'ad al-Maliki and is supported by conservative Shiite factors within the government. Many civil societies and women's groups have mobilized against the law, protesting on the streets of Baghdad and other cities across the country. So here's my big takeaway on this one. No, not all worldviews are equal, nor should they all be seen as equally moral and acceptable. Islam is an abominable, satanic worldview. Okay? If you're wondering, where would these Muslims even get the idea for allowing such a young child to marry an adult male? If you're wondering that, it's because you need to look no further than their quote-unquote prophet, Muhammad. One of his brides, Aisha, was somewhere between 6 and 9 years old when Muhammad not only married her, but consummated their marriage, aka he raped a child. Okay? So they look at their main guy and they think, well, gosh, I want to do the same thing. If Muhammad could have a child bride, why can't I have a child bride? So save me and spare me all of this. Well, it's all about cultural context and it's all about whatever. Morality is relative to the time and date and the place in the world and all that. Really? Pretty soon there might be 9-year-old girls that are married off to fully grown men. Some of you guys have daughters that are in that age range. This should make you furious, as it does me. Our next one here, the UK banning puberty blockers for gender-confused children. I've been wanting to talk about this one for a long time, but this is according to the BBC from March the 12th. Children will no longer routinely be prescribed puberty blockers at gender identity clinics, NHS England has confirmed. The decision comes after a review found that there is not enough evidence that they are safe or effective. Puberty blockers, which pause the physical changes of puberty, which is actually not true, thank you, BBC, will now only be available as part of research. It comes weeks before an independent review into the gender identity services in England is due to be published. An interim report from the review, published in 2022 by Dr. Hilary Cass, had earlier found that there were gaps in evidence around the drugs and called for a transformation in the model of care for children with gender-related distress. Okay, so in reality, there's no such thing as a puberty blocker. You cannot block puberty. You can negatively affect the person that is going through puberty biologically and physically and medically, but you can't stop it. You can't pause it and pick it back up later. Here's my big takeaway on this one. Unless Jesus comes back in the next few months or the next few years, historians will look back on this time in history, this time in world history, and wonder aloud how humans could have ever been this barbaric and naive. Again, find me a conservative that thinks that a child can change their gender and that it would be okay to cut off their healthy sexual organs or breast tissue or something like that, or to put them on some sort of puberty blocker, which will essentially make them sterile and affect them for the rest of their lives in a negative, deleterious way. This is a leftist progressive agenda item, and you're already seeing countries all over Europe, liberal Europe, saying we're not going to do this anymore. Like we bought the lie, but now we're going back on it. But Canada and America are going full bore into this, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And history will judge us super harshly for this, as it should. Next one here, the mastermind of the 9/11 terrorist attacks being spared the death penalty. So this is according to the New York Post on July the 31st. The alleged mastermind of the September 11 terror attacks and 2 other terrorists being held at Guantanamo Bay will be spared the death penalty under a new deal with prosecutors, it was revealed Wednesday. A spokesperson for the Office of Military Commissions, which is prosecuting the case, confirmed that it entered into pretrial agreements with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the accused principal architect of the al-Qaeda attacks, and 2 alleged co-conspirators, Walid Mohammed Salik Mubarak bin Atash and Mustafa Ahmed Adam al-Harsawi, all of whom have been held in the U.S. military prison off the coast of Cuba since 2003. So my big takeaway on this one is, why are any of these men still alive to begin with? You may have been shocked to learn that KSM was actually still alive. Now, I knew that he was still alive, but 9/11 happened almost 23 years ago. What exactly are we waiting for? And this is when you have an indication that a country does not have the stones. Well, there's two things you can look at here. The country doesn't have the stones to actually stand up for true morality. Again, if you can kill thousands of our citizens and we don't kill you back, that's problematic. And then the other side, the more, tinfoil hat side, is that these men are being kept alive for a reason. Now, some of them, if you're one of those dorks that thinks 9/11 was an inside job and, it was George Bush because he was getting back at the Middle East because he wanted to invade because they weren't nice to his father and all that. Okay. Show me some receipts that actually prove that any of that's true. But there's not a whole lot of options as to why these men are being kept alive. So thousands and thousands and thousands of people who lost family members on 9/11, they hear that this guy's just going to be able to live out the rest of his days in Guantanamo Bay, right? And he is in prison, but at the same time, he's not being held under horrible conditions. This is a guy that should be in a gulag, on the Arctic Circle. And yet he's kind of chilling in a climate that he actually prefers. And I'm sure he has some amenities that actually make his life not really that bad. And we're all just okay with that. Why? Because we've moved on from 9/11. We don't really care anymore. Oh, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan didn't go well, and blah, blah, blah. And so I guess it's all just kind of a wash. I just don't really understand why people aren't that fired up about it. All right, next quick hitter here. A woman murdering her newborn baby by throwing her out of a window because she was afraid that her baby would ruin her career. This is according to the Daily Mail on July the 5th. A woman has been jailed for 7.5 years after dropping her newborn baby out of a window because she was worried that the baby would ruin her career. Katarina Jovanovic, 28, from Laufen am Neckar, Baden-Württemberg State, Germany, good grief, was found guilty of manslaughter at the Heilbronn District Court on Wednesday, July the 3rd. Judges heard how she had given birth at home in secret 10 months ago on September the 12th and then dropped her baby daughter from her apartment window almost 12 feet onto the tarmac below. Horrified passersby found the minutes-old infant's body with a shattered skull underneath Jovanovic's balcony and called the police. So, an absolutely horrible story. This woman works for Porsche and she, was like, oh, this baby is going to ruin my chances at an even better office and even more pantsuits and designer handbags. And so she decided to kill her baby. The fact that she was given 7.5 years, she should have just come to America and we would just say, oh, it's a woman's right to choose. They would have killed the baby and then she could have gone back with her conscience clear. Right. But, I guess in Germany, they're like, well, this baby was in the world and you kind of dropped it out of a window, but maybe you didn't intend to kill this child. You just meant to drop it from a 12-foot place and then you weren't going to go out and try to save it. So manslaughter, I guess. A couple of big takeaways here. Number one, this is a direct consequence of feminist ideology. Because women all over the world have bought into the lie that their value comes from what they can produce in a business context, not what they can produce in a familial context. They bought the lie. So you have women not getting married. You have women foregoing having children, waiting until later on in their life to try and have children, and then they can't have children, right? But you have these women that think, I need to compete like the men do. So I need that corner office. I need that C-suite position. I need that next thing. I need to work the more hours. I need to take the extra trip. I would need to do the extra sale, all those different things. And what gets in the way of that for most women? A baby. And so that's what this woman did. She bought the feminist lie. She thought, I've got to get rid of this thing. I want to have sex. I want to have unprotected sex because that's fun, but I don't want the consequences of that. And I'm not taking any of the necessary precautions to keep that from happening because I'm irresponsible. But on the back end, I'm just going to kill the product of that thing that I want to do because I like it. And then big takeaway number two, this woman should be executed by being thrown out of a window of a tall building. So let's figure out the math, the size of that baby, how far of a 12-foot fall that would be. And then let's take this woman, let's put her at an equal height and let's drop her directly on her head. That would be justice here. This woman should be executed for this. But we live in a greater society of the world that doesn't really take the killing of young children, whether they are located in the womb or outside the womb, that seriously. They certainly don't in this case either. Our next quick hitter here. Major League Baseball and the New York Mets disgracing themselves by allowing the Hawk-Tua girl to throw out the first pitch at a game. Okay, so this is according to the New York Post on August the 16th. Haley Welch isn't charging the mound over her first pitch backlash. Welch, who became internet famous after an interview in which she said Haktua to describe a sexual act, went viral throughout the first pitch before the Mets played the Athletics at Citi Field on Thursday, and not everyone was happy about it. So at this point, basically all of you know exactly who this is referring to. So what this gal did, she was somewhere with a girlfriend and they're doing these kind of man on the street interviews thing. And this is a long interview. And this guy basically asks her, and she may have been drunk, who knows, asks her, hey, how do you keep your man satisfied? And she says, you got to give him that haktua and spit on that thing. So what she's describing is spitting on a man's erect penis that she is about to suck. Okay. That's what she's describing. So it became an internet phenomenon. You basically could not get away from it. Like every single algorithm had some sort of a Haktua angle for this girl. This girl went dark for a while. No one could find her, figure out who she was. Then she pokes her head above water. Now she's doing all these interviews. She's getting paid a whole bunch of money. She's appearing on stage with Zach Bryan. That was like her first, public appearance and all that type of thing. And she's famous for being a whore. That's kind of the hard truth of this, because if you listen to other little snippets from that little interview, again, you couldn't really get away from it. She was talking about how she had multiple sexual partners and she always kept, F buddies on the side and different things like that. She just went viral for the Haktua thing because it was so soundbite worthy. But my big takeaway here is that in an attempt to be hip and with it and relevant, Major League Baseball and the New York Mets took advantage of a whore's 15 minutes of fame. I remember when I saw this, because I was never going to talk about this on the show because I was like, this girl just needs to go away. Like, I keep thinking about her father. Like, her father's out there somewhere being like, this is what I raised, this complete whore of a person. And maybe her father's a complete piece of crap. Who the heck knows? Maybe we shouldn't feel bad for him. But the New York Mets posted that she threw out the first pitch, and then Major League Baseball reposted it. They accepted the collaboration. So Major League Baseball, one of the 4 major sports entities here in the United States of America, signed on to this. And again, they don't have their top level executives watching all their social media accounts and things like that, but they're taking advantage of this young girl for defiling herself, not only in her personal actions, but for how she's presenting herself in public so that they could get some clicks. Like, really? It was just an embarrassing moment, because even the fact that the Mets invited her was problematic, but then posting about it and MLB posting about it. And it really just talks about the currency of our time. And you see this when you see these video clips of these young people, because now there's girls trying to outdo the Haktua girl. So they're going up to these people in wherever they're doing these in New York City or Nashville or wherever, and they're trying to say something so outlandishly whorish that they too might be able to make money off of that, which is basically prostitution. So you're trying to make money off of your sexual peccadilles. And we're all here for it. My goodness, Major League Baseball in New York, the New York Mets should be absolutely ashamed for that. All right, next one here. Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, proving that he is indeed a beta male. So about a year ago, I think it was, he does this interview with another beta male from MSNBC. And so we're just going to go ahead and play the clip here. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Can we just talk about masculinity for a moment? Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and angry and lash out to be strong. It's just the opposite. Strength is how you show your love for people. Strength is how you are for people and how you have their back and how you stick up for other people and pushing out against bullies. I mean, that's what I believe it is. So every time I can speak against this toxicity, we're seeing it with our younger people. We're seeing it in our discourse, in our politics, in the media. You're seeing it as it relates to so many of the issues that we're pushing back on. So I think it's a problem, and I'm going to continue to use this platform every time I get to speak out against this toxic masculinity that's out there.
Okay, so right after you watch a video like that, there's really nothing I love more, I guess, than 2 beta males discussing what it means to be masculine. It's like so funny, right? That's like two elephants having a discussion about what it would be like to, swim across an English Channel. It's like, well, what exactly are we doing here? Big takeaway number one. Isn't it so interesting that the only men complaining about toxic masculinity are usually like doughy, pussified dudes or homosexuals? Isn't that always so interesting? We never hear from like a virile, healthy, jacked, red-blooded American male. We got a real problem with toxic masculinity in this world. It's always guys like this. It's always liberal dudes like this. And my second takeaway on this is it's a lot harder to control a populace that has virile, strong, capable men. So people that don't want men like that, people that want to control society and the levers of power, they have to get rid of the men and the people like this in our society. So one thing that you can do is you can castigate those people. You can make them seem crazy. You can make them seem like they're so far beyond the pale and outside of polite society that they're basically, put out of polite society just by everyone else's seemingly virtuous actions. Or you can get rid of them specifically, and there are ways to do that. Or you can just convince dunder-headed young men that they don't want to be like those rough and tumble men. They want to be more relaxed. They want to be more frumpy. They want to have a dad bod. They want to be a stay-at-home dad. They want to do everything they can to support the women in their life, not protect them, but to support them along their road that they're going down. Like that's what they need them to do. So it's so amazing and so obvious that this is really only happening on the left side of the aisle. And this is exactly what they want men to be like. And so for all you men out there right now, there's some of you that are a little bit doughy, a little bit frumpy, a little bit softer around the edges. Is that the type of guy that you want to be like? Or do you want to be like a guy that's actually manly, that is actually capable? So I guess you can make that decision. All right, just a few more here. InterVarsity Press releasing a critical race theory Bible commentary. So it's called the New Testament in Color, a multi-ethnic Bible commentary. So here's the description. In a first of its kind volume, the New Testament in Color offers biblical commentary that is multi-ethnic, diverse, contextual, informative, reflective, prophetic, and inspiring. Historically, Bible commentaries have focused on the particular concerns of a limited segment of the church. They mean white people, all too often missing fresh questions and perspectives that are fruitful for biblical interpretation. Listening to scholars from diverse backgrounds, they mean not white people, and ethnicities, they mean not white people, offers us an opportunity to explore the Bible from a wider angle, a better vantage point. So my big takeaway on this absolute piece of dreck is Karl Marx would be so proud. I mean, my goodness, InterVarsity Press, what in the hell are you doing? So this plays right into ethnic Gnosticism, where, standpoint epistemology, like, oh, because of your level of melanin, you can give a certain level of experience that us white people won't possibly be able to understand. But what this is this is an attack on all of the dutiful theologians that have carried the scripture from biblical times to us today, that have given us theological commentary and direct commentary to help us understand what the scripture is saying, to help us understand what God is trying to communicate in his word. But they're saying that if any of those people were white, that they weren't capable of doing that job well. They will even say, well, wasn't the Bible written down by a bunch of white men? Completely ignoring the fact that Middle Eastern Jews are not white people. And here's another thing. What do you mean by white? When you say whiteness is problematic, do you mean Germanic? Do you mean Nordic? Do you mean Anglo? Do you mean Saxon? Do you mean Celtic? Do you mean Latin? Like, do you mean Scandinavian? What exactly do you mean when you say white? Like you just kind of put all these people that have lower levels of melanin, you just kind of mishmash them and put them into this group and call it white. And then you put a big red X on it and say that's bad. Like you're absolutely full of crap. And InterVarsity Press is just going right along with it. They're literally creating something that I expect people to buy. And I'm sure a lot of leftist, non-Christians, liberal folks will actually, progressive Christians, if you can call them that, they will buy this hook, line, and sinker. They will absolutely get this and they will give it to other people. And then you're going to have dopey people, these well-meaning pastors, these go along to get along pastors, these I want to be known for what I'm for, not what I'm against pastors. They're going to read this and they're going to be like, well, I need to understand these people's perspective. Why do they have a unique perspective? Well, because they don't look like me. It's like, you moron. You don't need to know someone's ethnicity or their race or their gender to know whether or not they're giving you good biographical information on somebody from the Bible or overall biblical commentary about something we're seeing in the scripture. You don't need to know any of those things to get a good exegesis of a particular text. But this is exactly what the critical race theorists want you to do. They want you to view things. That's why it's so dangerous that people like J.D. Greer allowed CRT to creep its way into the SBC. That's why something like that is so dangerous. Because if you're like, no, it's not critical race theory. We're just going to see the Bible through a more multicultural lens. What does that mean? Prove to me how someone's level of melanin can change their understanding of the Word of God. Please help me understand. Please help me understand how African pastors that last I checked are way darker than I am are against things like this because they can see it for the perverse satanic nonsense that it is. But here you are, like you got your fancy book deals and your fancy churches and you go up there and you've got all your stuff and you're all squared away and you're going to all these conferences and gosh, you're just so smart and so awesome. And you get to be the hero. Because not only are you going to support the New Testament in color, you're going to require it as reading for everybody that's on your staff, all the white people that are on your staff. And then you're going to look to the people of color on your staff and look to them as if they can give commentary to this group that nobody else could possibly understand. What is that if not racism? What is that if it's not racism? To look at a group of people and say, yeah, we don't really need your opinions anymore. People that have looked like you have given their opinions enough. But hey, you people over here that don't look like us, how about you teach us dumb white folks how to think about the Bible, right? My goodness. Like, guys, it's not going to stop. Things like this are not just going to stay at InterVarsity Press. They're going to be all over and still in some ways are all over some of our bigger Christian publishing houses. All right, next quick hitter here. A high school in Edmond, Oklahoma, that's my city, barring a student from flying an American flag on his personal vehicle. So this is according to the Oklahoman on August the 26th. Controversy sparked last week after Caleb Horst, a senior at Edmond North, was told that he couldn't fly the American flag on his truck. I've been flying it for a while, Horst told KOCO. I've never really had problems with it before, and it's our First Amendment, so it's kind of hard for them to infringe upon our rights. Last week, Edmond Public Schools told the Oklahoman that prohibiting all types of flags on vehicles is a long-standing practice due to potential disruption. The policy is also implemented in an effort to provide a safe school environment, as flying flags on vehicles creates safety issues in the parking lot and can cause damage to other vehicles, the district said. My freaking goodness. This is about as dumb as that we couldn't put snipers on that roof because it was sloped at like a 10-degree angle. Okay, I've literally never seen a flag do damage to a vehicle. Never seen it happen. Now, the flagpole might be able to do that if it like literally jumps off the car and goes through the windshield of the car next to it, but we don't see that as being an issue. But here's my big takeaway on this one. I guarantee you that if this had been a pride flag on a student's vehicle, that the liberal school district and all the people running the school wouldn't have said a damn thing about it. Not a thing, not a word, nothing. They may have even called the news to say, look at how brave our young student is for having this pride flag or their pride progress flag. You know, isn't this so great that they can just be who they want to be in our school? Guys, I get it. Some people have tried to say, look, you know, Edmonds had this for forever. Like, this isn't really that big a deal. Like, hold your horses. Like, they don't want one day, you know, for it to be a BLM flag and another day to be a Hamas flag, another day to be this flag and all that. And it's like, okay, I can see the argument for that. But Old Glory, you're telling me that you can't make an exception for the flag of the United States of America? Because if there were one flag that would be good for kids to have on their vehicle, it would be the American flag. This flag that you trot out there at your basketball games and your football games, and you make a big deal about your ROTC doing the presentation of the colors. But if a kid wants to fly the flag from their vehicle, their personal vehicle, that is outside of the school, that's beyond the pale. So it may not seem like a big deal to you, but it is a big deal. Because again, I guarantee you if this had been a pride flag, the school wouldn't have said anything. They would have celebrated the student. All right. So we made it all the way here, and here's the payoff for you guys that made it all the way here towards the end of the episode. Last quick hitter, and that's Andy Stanley, still super duper sucking. So this guy sucks for a myriad of reasons. I've talked about a lot of them on the show. He is a heretic for the things that he's done and said in the conferences that he's held. But let's go back to the beginning of the Paris Olympics. We've got the opening ceremonies. Again, I've already said, everyone's given their commentary on the opening ceremonies. They were ridiculous. Like, they were obviously mocking Christianity, mocking Jesus, mocking the Last Supper, all these different things. But I mean, France has been pagan for hundreds of years at this point. I don't know why anyone was shocked. But Andy Stanley sent out this tweet the night of the Paris opening ceremonies. Okay. Dear France, the Normandy American Cemetery is the final resting place of 9,238 Americans whose graves are marked by 9,238 crosses. American soldiers who in most cases volunteered to come to your shores in your time of need. Their final prayers were to the God whose son you mocked in front of the entire world. It was during their very last meal, during the very meal you went to such creative pains to denigrate, that Jesus instructed his followers to love one another and then defined what he meant. Greater love has no one than this, that one lay his life down for his friends. While you host the Olympic Games, remember your nation hosts a 172.5 acre reminder of what love looks like. You don't just owe Christians an apology. You owe the West an apology. Like, I literally just got chills just now rereading that tweet. What an amazing tweet. An absolute 1-2 punch, knockout, KO, perfect response to what we saw. I mean, it was pristine. There was not an ounce of fat on that tweet. It was absolutely amazing. And I'm sitting here like, dadgummit, Andy, you had to say something positive. You had to do something right. So now I'm going to have to say good things about you on my show. But then he deleted the tweet. Within about 24 hours, he deleted the tweet. Because apparently he got some feedback that it was a little bit mean. It was a little pointed. It was a little incendiary. You know, what are people going to think? They're not going to think you're very open-minded or welcoming of other viewpoints or artistic expression. So my big takeaway here is apparently Andy Stanley is just planning to be a yellow-bellied coward for the rest of his life. We already know he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I've said this before and I will say it again. We should pray that he repents of all of his ways, all of his cowardice, and all the things he's doing to try to make Christianity more progressive by ignoring sin. And if he doesn't do that, we should pray that he loses his entire ministry, the entire thing, that it all comes crashing down right on his head, and he can just go retire with all his millions of dollars and just no longer have any influence whatsoever on Christ's church. We should all be praying for that. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around with us for this long one today, but we're going to do a quick resilience boost before we let you go. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. So we've got links to where you can become a donor, guys. We are a donation-based ministry. We can't do anything that we need to do without guys just like you hopping on board. And I've got links to everything that I referred to in the quick hitter segment. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.